What we have here is a reading comprehension passage with a set of 4 questions. Let's look at the first question. Which of the following options best represents the central idea of the passage? The author starts by talking about how women have been central to the conservation of forest area in a particular district in India, and then goes on to talk about how the conservation happens in that area and why the forests had actually got degraded and how they are again reviving it. The central theme of the passage essentially focuses on how community involvement is important in order to regenerate forests and in order to save them. And hence the correct answer will become option D, the importance of the involvement of tribal communities in the protection and regeneration of forests and its resources. Let's look at the other options also. Option A says the arising of a new movement amongst tribal communities to protect the forest and its resources. Now, the focus of the passage is not a new movement, although it has been used as a movement which happened in a particular district in India, is being used as an example to illustrate that how community involvement is important. Option B says the role of women in protecting land rights of tribals and ensuring sustainable use of forest resources. The role of women has been emphasized only in the first paragraph, and it is again part of the same example that we have talked about. Option C says that the rampant misuse of forest land and resources will lead to their depletion, eventual loss of livelihood for tribal communities. Although it is true that if forest land and resources are misused, they would get depleted and it will eventually lead to loss of livelihood for a lot of communities, especially rural communities. But that is not the central idea. That's just one point which is being made by the passage. Hence, the correct answer to this question is option D. This question says the data provided in the third paragraph lead to the inference that. Let's read the third paragraph again. The third paragraph says, according to the latest Forest Survey of India, the country's forest cover increased by 5871 square kilometer between 2010 and 12, bringing total forest cover to 697,898 square kilometer, about 69 million hectare. Still, research indicates that every single day, an average of 135 hectare of forest land is handed over to development projects like mining and power generation. This paragraph is essentially telling us that although we have increased the forest cover through sustainable efforts, but because of a lot of development projects and mining and power generation projects, a lot of land is also lost every day. Which means that although we are making progress, that progress is also being delayed or is being stifled because of a lot of development projects, etc. It can lead to an inference that when we do development projects and mining and power generation projects, they need to also take care of the fact that they are not destroying the forest cover that we have. Let's look at our options. Option A says larger corrective efforts of villages will lead to better management of India's forest cover. Villages have not really been talked about, although we have said that between 10 and 12 we have increased forest cover, and that might be because of the efforts of villages, but that is not part of the third paragraph. Option B says development projects should be sanctioned with the view that they do not harm the sustainability of forest resources. This is what we talked about essentially. This is the correct answer for this question also, because the paragraph very clearly tells us that although we have made progress in the area of increased forest cover, we are also not doing enough to protect that increase by doing a lot of land development projects and mining projects and power projects. Option C says the eastern states of India are spearheading the initiative that help protect the country's forest cover. Although this has been mentioned in the passage throughout, but it is not part of the third paragraph, so it will not be included in the inference for the third paragraph. Option D says the increase in forest cover in India between 10 and 12 is being completely offset every day by proliferation of development projects on forest land. Although the proliferation of development projects on forest land would lead to decrease in forest cover, this does not mean that the increase in forest cover is completely offset by them, and hence this is not the correct answer. Next question says, from the information given in the passage, which of the following cannot be inferred? Let's look at our options. Option A says, rampant and illegal logging in Orissa and subsequent deforestation is related to drying up of groundwater resources. This is correct, as they have talked about how illegal logging and rampant and illegal logging in Orissa led to deforestation, which essentially did lead to droughts in Orissa. Option B says loss of livelihood in the village of Nayagar can be linked to the rapid deforestation that took place in the state. Because of the deforestation in the state, there were a lot of droughts, because of which The primarily agricultural villages of Niagara got affected, and because of which livelihoods were lost and a lot of people moved out of this village to find jobs elsewhere. Hence option B is also correct. Option C says prohibitory measures to ensure that forest resources are not misused have helped in the forest regeneration process in Orissa. When the passage talks about regeneration process in Orissa, they have talked about how the obtaining of fuel and wood from forest was prohibited, how it was prohibited to carry axes into the forest. They had also prohibited goats who could destroy the saplings in the forest area. Hence, prohibitory measures have definitely helped uh, the forest regeneration process in Orissa, and option C is also correct. Let's look at option D. The prohibition of grazing of animals in the forest has helped in safeguarding the regeneration process in forest. The passage particularly comments on goats, but it does not talks about other animals, and hence we don't know if the prohibition goes also on other animals or not. So option D cannot be really inferred from the passage. Next question says, based on the information in the passage, it can be inferred that of all the measures used to regenerate forest resources, the most productive is. Your options are collective, protective, legal, and prohibitory. Although prohibitory and protective measures helped in regeneration, but passage essentially talks about that it is the collective effort of the communities at large that can help restore forests, and hence the correct answer for this question will become option A.